Swiss electrical engineer George de Mascal in 1941 went for a pleasant walk, with his dog into the woods, and he wondered why was burdock seeds clinging to his coat and dog, and that's when it made him discover and invent, eventually, what became known as Velcro. Velcro, you wonder, what the hell has that got to do? What has that got to do with nature and with the coronaviruses and the cure? Well, a lot. So let's jump inside and see. Right, so what we're looking at here is new science. New science, I hear you say, that means we're all cured. The world will never be the same again. Well, maybe not, but we have to figure out exactly the nuts and bolts of what is being said here. So it says here that basically Covid-19 came from a greater family, which was essentially Covid-2, SARS-CoV viruses. And these are things that had affected parts of Asia before. And they're saying that in the future, unfortunately, scientists are reckoning there's going to be more COVID strains of viruses out there. So there's huge possibility, in fact, for another pandemic in a few years to come. So with that in mind, they're saying, well, what generally caused it? And they're looking at bats and animals mingling essentially with the human population. And once, say, for example, a bat carries an infection and it goes into a human, then, of course, it spreads from human to human, hence the social distancing. So this guy, Alex Cohn, who is a graduate research student, Caltech team designed a protein-based 60 sub-unit nanoparticle into which pieces of up to 8 different types of coronavirus have been attached. Now, not to get too technical on it, what that means is that they injected all of this into mice, right? And they found that essentially the vaccine induces or it creates production of antibodies. Now, this is the word antibodies that we're all becoming or have become familiar with in the latter half of 2020, early 2021 with regard to vaccines. And these antibodies then react to the variety of different coronaviruses. So, in other words, you're going to get infected, but it's how with a vaccine or certain vaccines in the future for predicted viruses from the corona family, how your body will build up these antibodies, these defense mechanisms essentially against what you're going to be infected with. So this research is described in the journal Science. Now, here's the interesting part. The nanoparticle that they're talking about, this new breed of what they've created against future attacks, is shaped like a cage. A cage. God, don't we all feel like we've been in cages in 2020? Anyway, like a cage made up of 60 identical proteins. Aha! Because it's proteins in our body, of course, that are going to be affected. And each of which of these has a small protein tag that functions like a piece of Velcro. That's where it's coming in again. You see the Velcro. When we think of Velcro, it's sticky, isn't it? It's two sides sticking off the other. And we think of going back to the guy, George de Mascal, and the time that he went for a walk and the burdock seed in nature. And of course, what is burdock seed? Well, if you look at it, it's hugely beneficial for anti-oxidants, anti-everything, anti-lots of things. It's a hugely beneficial plant. But it's found in nature. And that's where nature has given George the idea of Velcro. And this whole idea of Velcro has given the genius idea to these guys, supposedly, that are creating this new science with regard to a vaccine and a cure that could possibly not just come, nothing to do with COVID-19, but for future coronaviruses. So if you are locked down, if you're sick of being locked down, if you've had your business closed down, if you have a certain insurance policy that you have to pay for businesses, if they're putting it up and they're saying it's because of COVID-19, if it's this, that, and the other, if there's future laws, future changes, guidelines, and so on, the reality is stop for a second and think. The scientists are predicting that there is going to be other pandemics down the line. So hold the train, stop what you're doing, and plan. You've had your warning. 2019, 2020, early 2020, across 3 years at least, we've all had an experience that we ain't going to forget, and yet we have no stories from, because we were alone and we didn't know any better. So to prepare for that again, you, me, everybody can get ahead somewhere. And we can be prepared, and the scientists are telling us to stay with this idea, this new science, that there are ways of helping yourself with these protein tags that will bind in that cage, they're saying, and the other half of the piece of Velcro then will snap. And this is where the whole proteins, and when these viral pieces were mixed together, they reckon from the experiments, with a nanoparticle cage structure, each virus tag stuck to a tag on the cage, which was a good thing, right? Resulting in a nanoparticle presenting spikes representing different coronavirus strains on its surface, it says, quote unquote. So basically, it's representing spikes. Now think of the UK variant of this in layman's terms, right? The UK variant of this whole COVID-19. What happened? You had something happening with the spikes coming off the end of the spikes and so on. This is the physical structure of the actual virus. So what they're telling us here is now, when the variant changed, of course, it became more transmissible and it multiplied more to people. And this is where we got way more cases in lots of countries. And of course, that was when we thought we had it beat. This is what they're saying. They're actually predicting not only what's going to happen in the future and more pandemics, but the viruses that will come, that they now have done and figured out a little piece of science that they can actually get the two pieces to stick together like Velcro, and that, in a nutshell, will be that. They'll be predicted and presumed cures along the road, which is good. So they have learned something, not just from COVID-19, but also the coronaviruses that have come and haven't harmed and will come in the future. So be prepared for them. But remember that there are helpful things out there too. So what they're saying is, quote unquote, unfortunately, SARS-CoV-2 is unlikely to be the last coronavirus to cause pandemic. That in itself is a nightmare of a quotation, says Bjorkman, the researcher. And he said, Alex results show that it is possible to raise diverse neutralizing antibody responses. So reversing, that's a good word. Why? Because something that happens in a bad way can be reversed. Brilliant. Even against coronavirus strains. Phew. That were not just represented on the injected nanoparticle. So we are hopeful, he reckoned, that this technology could be used to protect against future animal coronaviruses that cross even into humans, which is fantastic. Again, in addition, the nanoparticles elicit neutralizing response against SARS-CoV-2. So it could be possible to use them now to protect against Covid-19. Covid-19, it is actually saying Covid-19 could be protected against possibly, as well as other coronavirus with pandemic potential. But I suppose that goes back to what I just said, the layman here, with regard to, hey, the strain coming from Britain and the strain that was coming from South Africa and different places like that. And if there's future strains of this COVID-19, the other deeper research that they're doing now is showing that there's a way of going against what's happening, reversing what's happening. This is a really bright bulb of nature, bright light. So it's really good to see that there's kind of background research being done here with regard to not just future coronaviruses and pandemics do hit, according to what they're saying, but also that there is a light at the end of the tunnel with COVID-19, even if future variants come in and the vaccines that are currently there, say for example from Moderna, from Oxford, from Pfizer, don't actually work or get reversed in their own way. So science is running ahead and there's new science out every day. Isn't that wonderful that we're kind of getting there? And there's always hope that's coming from nature. Once again, it's just for us people to dip into it and figure it out. So there you go. Please subscribe if you haven't already. If you have, thank you for watching. Have a great day.